This is Mark Bell.
Mark Bell, and this is our between sessions. We're going to talk a little bit about Mark, all Mark's stuff. It's all about Mark today.
It's all about me.
And we're both therapists at Arizona Family Institute. So, Mark, are you the new director at Arizona Family?
Clinical director.
What does this mean?
It means that anything of a clinical nature where there's questions or concerns that my fellow colleagues and therapists have about their clients, any issues come up, we process them together, and I just make sure that we're toeing the line and doing what we're supposed to do. And if they need any support or guidance, I offer what I can. But we also do it as a collaborative process, so it's never just on me, but somebody's got to take the blame in the fall. That's me.
Keep a note.
Yeah. So everybody's going to be on their best behavior.
We definitely are. Well, let's talk a little bit about you and what you do here at Arizona Family.
Well, other than now being the clinical director, I'm actually a therapist. I work primarily with men dealing with some form of, whether it's sexual addiction, pornography addiction, or some kind of betrayal that they've engaged in their primary relationship, their marriage, their girlfriend, etc. I really try to help these guys be much more aware of the impact of their choices, not just on their own life, but definitely on the lives of their loved ones, especially their spouse or partner. As you well know, you work with the partners often in these situations, and that betrayal that they go through is profoundly traumatic. And unfortunately, in the beginning stages, these fellas, they mean well, but they typically don't quite get it yet. They just don't get what their spouse or partner's going through. They're really caught up in their own shame and pain because this has usually been a long-term behavior, and it's been a pattern of self-destruction in some ways that they haven't been able to untether themselves from. So their own struggle to be empathetic to themselves has been hindered, let alone their ability to be compassionate to their spouse or partner. And it doesn't mean they don't want to. I mean, I find these men to be genuinely, sincerely striving, but they just lack those skills. And my job is to help them build those skills. And they have a lot of talent and willpower inside that needs to be unearthed. It's kind of like black gold under the earth.
Cool.
You know, you got to tap it and bring it out because they just haven't had that training yet. And those skills they just need to be honed and then polished over months and years throughout the rest of their life. And we work really hard to help them have a sense of hope and optimism, give them some real clear direction. And I just love working with the guys. Now, of course, I work with couples, them and their spouse, and we work through the relational components. I do family counseling as needed. Occasionally, I'll work with the betrayed partners, but typically I like to refer them over to someone like you so that I can really do my best work working with the fellas. And it isn't just that. I've been in the field of marriage and family therapy for a long time, and so it could be any number of things around communication issues. There could be sexual disconnection issues that are going on. There could be even faith challenges. I mean, we really run the gamut in my practice because I really like to help people just move through whatever they get stuck on. And then when they get a little unstuck, let them go back out there and hone those skills. And if they need more of me, they can come back. But my idea is to work myself out of a job the moment I start meeting a client. They don't need to be dependent on me. They need to be able to be reliant upon themselves in their relationships.
That's cool. That's hard work.
Yeah.
Like when you described the having to, figure out these kinds of problems and help people practice and discover that gold that you say that's inside. How did you? I'm really fascinated. I want to know, how did you get started in that kind of work?
Yeah, well, when I was about 7 years old, I woke up and said I want to be a sex addiction therapist when I grow up.
Oh, you didn't?
I did not. I did not do that.
What did you want to be when you were
growing up? When I was younger, I actually wanted to be an actor. I really did. I even did theater in high school and even in college. I went to junior college for the first years of my collegiate experience, and I got an associate's in theater arts.
I'm dying to know your favorite role.
Oh, we did a lot of musicals and we did a lot of one acts, but one of my favorite roles was I played Barnaby my senior year in high school in Hello, Dolly. So it was one of the primary roles. There's a lot of singing, a lot of dancing.
I know you can riff right now.
Can riff, yeah. No, well, that would be more West Side Story. When you're a jet all the way from you. So that was my sophomore year in high school. Loved it. I fell in love with drama after my grandma, who was raising me at the time, because my parents had gone through a separation, and long story short, come meet me if you want to know more about the story, right? But at the end of the day, I was being raised by my grandma along with my brother, and this was my sophomore year in high school, and she spoke like a sailor. She was a little gruff and a little tough around the edges, but she was pure love, and she knew what I needed, and I had a whole shy streak inside of me, and she just said, you're doing theater, and I was so upset. I was so ticked off at her.
Screaming.
Yeah, I was like, no way. I was so nervous and self-conscious. And within the first couple months of doing beginning drama, my sophomore year in high school, I realized, oh, I might have found something, right? You know, and so Grandma knew. And then the rest of my high school, I was devoted to theater. I mean, I still did sports. I did swimming and track and things like that, but theater was it. And so, you know, in my mind's eye, I was going to be an actor, and did a couple years of that. And then I said, wait a minute, I'm probably not going to make any money doing this. So then I thought, maybe I ought to get a real education.
The old line.
Yeah.
The old line for artists and creatives, right? Get a real job.
So maybe when my kids are all grown, I'll go back to that and I'll retire and go do local theater in my 60s.
That'd be really cool.
We'll see.
That'd be cool.
But,
so what about that?
So how did I get from that? So I finished my undergraduate program. I thought I was going to go into education. I spent a year working in a secondary school system in my hometown, and I said, heck no, this is not for me, right?
That's hard work. I shout out to our teachers out there, man.
Big time shout out. You're underpaid, undersupported, and there's way too many expectations put on you. And certainly in the current climate we're seeing now, there's too much on your plate.
Yeah.
Well, I felt a lot of that already then, and I knew I could teach. I just didn't want to have to keep trying to motivate kids that didn't want to learn. And I was teaching Spanish, so how many kids want to learn Spanish? So anyway, I did, but nobody was. It didn't seem like everybody else was like me. But during that year, I went and applied to a bunch of schools, and I decided I wanted to be a marriage and family therapist. And that was the conversation that came from an interaction with one of my good buddies at the time, who said he wanted to do that. He ended up going into real estate and things like that, which was totally left field. But apparently that was one of those God moments where it kind of put something in there, and I thought, oh, that sounds like it'll fit. At the time, it was just, hey, I got family problems. I can relate to people with problems in their families. Maybe I can go be of help. Right. So much to learn at that point.
So much to learn.
Went to the University of Southern Mississippi, of all places, in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Knew nothing about it, but my dad is from the South. He's from South Carolina, so I had familiarity with the South, and I really loved the people and the culture. And so my wife and I, we moved out there at that time, and we had our first two children out there. My first two sons were born there, and I spent 2 years getting my graduate education, got a master's in marriage and family therapy, and almost upon graduation, I was hired at a local treatment center that was working with sex addicts. It was a 6-week program working with sex addiction, and I had no real understanding of what this was, because there's not training in the grad school programs
they don't
for
mention
sex
it.
addiction.
No.
Yeah, there's like some
this
cursory.
Is specialized.
Yeah, it's a cursory discussion, and then you're just kind of like moving on to. Yeah, it's mostly theory based, right?
Yeah.
So I went there within the first week of meeting with these clients, and I was mostly shadowing at first the other clinicians that were there. It was like a light bulb went off.
Really?
I thought, oh my gosh, the reason the light bulb went off, a little personal share, is I could relate to these guys. I knew exactly what they were talking about. Now, I hadn't gone to the extent that these fellas had gone, because these guys were paying top dollar to be there for 6 weeks. They had really nuked their lives in a lot of ways, and they're really trying to reorganize themselves. But I knew my experience when I was young. I had exposure to pornography. I had an affinity for that, and I knew what it was doing to my life and my brain, and it felt good. It was really exciting and
it's
thrilling.
confusing, isn't it? When you see it, you're like, wait a minute.
When I started to make sense of, whoa, there's a name for what I was going through. I just thought I was a bad kid. I thought I was a naughty boy.
Really?
And so, of course, I kept everything hidden and concealed. Wouldn't share it with anybody. Nobody knew my little secret. And fortunately, there was enough people that came in my life that were good, healthy mentors, mostly men that were mentors to me. After my parents separated, my dad didn't live with us. And my grandpa did what he could, but he was working all the time.
Yeah.
So there were people from the church, there were people from the school, guys that I really was drawn to, and they gave me a sense of what it meant to be a healthy male.
That's cool.
A healthy adult
man.
What
is this?
Right?
What is this healthy man image? That's really fascinating.
That really moved me, and I thought, wow, I'm so grateful that worked for me. I want to be able to provide that for these other guys and it doesn't mean that they had poor parenting, everyone, and then where their dad was horrible, but something was missed along the way, or they concealed something that they didn't reveal, and they developed a habit towards pornography, sex, whatever the case may be, to alleviate their distress, alleviate their pain, to numb out, and they weren't even conscious of the effect it was having on them in a negative way, other than the shame, right? Like how it affects their mood and their attitude towards females and relationships. But it made all the sense in the world to me. So I knew, okay, this is the direction that my career is going to go. Worked there for 2 or 3 years at that treatment center, and then relocated here to Arizona, and have continued in that work ever since.
I think that's really cool. It seems like you're passionate about men's health,
Definitely.
men's.
Definitely.
Tell me more about that, because
Mhm.
this world is incredibly confusing, and
Mhm.
men are incredibly, at least to me, confusing.
So, there's this term that's been kind of in vogue in the recent years called toxic masculinity.
Oh yeah,
right?
I've heard it.
So I've heard it, never been a real fan of it, but I also strive to understand kind of the context of why people would say that. And I could see that there's, a lot of this, machismo or male hierarchy in our community. So I'm not naive to that. But what I started to realize is most of these guys are just more masculine immature than it is toxic, right?
Describe that.
So I find it more that there's immature masculinity in the sense that we don't necessarily get the training on how to be emotionally intelligent, how to be a healthy sexual partner to our mate, to understand her needs rather than just what I'm looking for, right? And so there's so many layers to this, and I didn't get any of that training, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I won't even be graphic, but I remember the one conversation I had with my grandma about sexuality, and it was more perfunctory at best, and it was her way of basically saying, consider the woman, but her way of doing it didn't really help me in understanding, right? But she meant well.
I mean, the generational knowledge, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
But I mean, my mom and dad, they were good people too, are still good people.
Yeah.
But they also weren't giving me any great training around this. There was a lot of some of the religious components were kind of infused in. So
almost like we didn't know how back then.
They did not, and I think we're still struggling to help people figure it out. Because there's a reason people are coming to us.
Yes.
Because we're struggling to understand how to be mature men, mature women, and have mature relationships that are empathetic, that are accountable. And the underarching thing that I really strive to help my clients do is to learn how to be curious. Curious with themselves, and definitely curious with their spouse or their partner. And when there's a lack of curiosity, then what you're going to get is a lot of contempt or judgment and frustration, because we start to project our attitudes and thoughts and our misunderstandings onto them as if it's some kind of truth, but we didn't get any perspective from them based on the context of what they're thinking and why they're thinking it. Even when our spouses or partners are behaving in ways that are very offensive or hurtful, what's the context? It doesn't mean you have to tolerate and endure abuse. I'm just inviting us to be much more conscientious of there's a context for why my spouse is saying or doing this. What is that? I want to have some boundaries and self-protection and advocate, but I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I formed a connection with you for a reason. I found something in you to meet something in me, and I'm hoping something in me is meeting something in you. But without some of that training and the skill development, we just kind of slip and stumble over each other without intending to. And I find that most people at their core are good people. Yeah. And yet good people every day inflict harm on other people.
We do.
Right? I'm guilty of this with my own spouse and my own family. I look at the moments when I'm like, I know better.
Sorry.
I got plaques on my wall that say I'm a therapist. I should know better.
We ain't perfect.
No, we're not.
So I'm interested to know about this curiosity piece that you're talking about.
Okay. What about it?
I think, what does it give a connection or a relationship when you are curious about your partner?
Well, let me tell you what it does for me.
Yeah.
So when someone, anyone, my wife included, my children included, when someone asks questions of me, and I have a sense, I'm paying attention, do they actually want to know, or are they just saying something, right? But when I get a sense that somebody's actually interested in the responses that I have, and they've learned some of those nonverbal cues of like eyes and like face and like, oh my gosh, they're leaning in and so forth, it sends a message to me that you accept me. Because what is the number one fear and discomfort that most people have?
Oh, a rejection.
You got it.
We don't want to be rejected.
Real or imagined.
Real or imagined.
Rejection.
We
will do anything to avoid the sentiment or the sensation of rejection.
Yeah, we will.
From childhood up to getting into the grave, we do not want to feel rejected. And so we strive as much as we can to avoid the experience of rejection. And oftentimes we miss out on the opportunity of connection because we're afraid of the potential for rejection. Curiosity, it's the bridge. When you're curious with me, and I sense, like, even with that face you're making right now, right? Like, I'm like, okay, she's paying attention. She wants to know.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel inspired to kind of lean in and go, okay, I'll give you some of this.
Yeah.
And I want to see, will you be a good steward with what I share about my heart? And most people don't just divulge all of it.
No.
We give parts. And when I see you take that and are tender with it and kind and interested and not trying to fix it or solve it or tell me it should be this, like, you're just like, oh my gosh. That makes sense. And I've said this often with my clients. I said, look, in 15 minutes with you, I can ask you a number of questions, and based on your responses, I will have a really good sense of the context that explains why you think the way you think, why you do the things you do, and why you say the things you say. It doesn't mean that what you say, do, and think is healthy all the time. But I can appreciate the context of it, and then we can start having a relationship based on understanding that can then invite us to change, right? I was motivated to change conduct, actions, by the approach that these people, these men had with me, where they were genuinely curious, they were genuinely caring, they weren't controlling, they weren't condemning, and in that space I felt super comfortable to then say, wait a minute, I can give a little more, and I want to emulate that. That's how I want to be, right? I want to mimic that till it becomes that for me. And that's essentially what children are doing all the time anyway.
Yeah,
they're mimicking and watching and observing.
Even as adults, we do it, right?
Touche.
Not just kids. We all learning.
That's so true.
You know, I wonder, well, here's a question I hear often. You know, can people really change?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
People can change all the time. The challenge is don't assume that because you change that you'll stay that way.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? Like
Tell me more about that.
Like I'll take exercise, for example. I'm really into working out, and there's times in my life when I'm like, I'm feeling really good. And human nature is
take a day off.
Take a day, take a week, take a month off, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what's going on? Like, and then I ebb and flow in these moments of either I'm really motivated, inspired, or I'm not, right? And I've come to really embrace the concept that motivation is a terrible way to try to get myself to do things that I need to do, because it's so emotionally fickle. It comes and ebbs and flows. For me, it's more about what is my commitment, and I develop a discipline around that commitment. My commitment is to be physically healthy. Oh, okay. So my discipline is every day, Monday through Friday, currently, I get up at 5 o'clock and I put in between 30 and 45 minutes of a workout. And I know I've got to do that before my kids wake up around 6:30, right? Because if I do it, if I'm trying to get a workout after they're awake the whole day, it is not going to happen. But that's my schedule. I know that my commitment is around a form of health, not a specific workout, right? And I'm not trying to motivate myself with certain gains and things like that. Those things are helpful. What I want is a commitment in spite of the days and moments where I don't want to get up out of bed. And the commitment to that has to supersede it. But trying to do that on my own becomes less realistic. So I need people in my life that know my commitment. I've got my brother who knows it, my wife who knows it, I've got my good brother-in-law who knows, like people that know what I'm working towards. And they it's not so much that they're trying to motivate me, but my knowledge that they're aware is more power. It's more strength for me. And knowing that when they check in and say, hey, how's your workouts going? Hey, you getting those marks that you were looking for? Okay, yeah, you're, again, connection, you're interested, curiosity.
Yeah.
It motivates and inspires, but it isn't the cause of it. I've created that commitment for myself. They just infuse additional support in that. And it just becomes this reciprocal thing because I want to be curious about what's going on in their life. I'm really interested in what's going on in your practice over there in your business, and I'm going to ask you questions about that.
It becomes energetically more exciting.
You got it.
You know, one thing I like about that approach too is it sounds, you know, like you use the analogy of exercise, and we all think, oh, I got to do this program with this exact thing, and man, that just sets me up for failure, right? But I love the softer, more compassionate approach of, hey, I have an anchor here, and my anchor is I want to dedicate this 40 minutes to health or whatever it is, or I want to, and what does that look like? It doesn't look like the rigid stuff. It looks like, what do I need in the moment?
I like that you use the word anchor, because that's exactly what it is for me. Workouts for me, and it's different for other people. May not work out, but they may get up and read. They may do some spiritual thing. They may do a meditation. They may go for a walk. Okay,
whatever your jam is.
Exactly. Yoga. I don't care what somebody's thing is. For me, that does anchor me. And a workout, it gets my body moving, gets the blood going, my metabolism running, and I just feel an energy to my day. When I don't do that, I feel the lack of it. Now, I don't have to be so rigid in every single day. If I need to skip a day because
skipping a day could be health as well.
Skipping a day can be health. But I'm not going to give myself permission to keep doing that over and over again. So I'm going to use it judiciously. But I'm also going to do something with that time. Not just, I'm going to go veg and watch Netflix or something.
Right.
If I need extra sleep, then it's going to be for sleep. If I want to go out for a walk instead of a workout, I'm going to do that. If I just want to sit in the backyard and listen to some of the sounds of the nature or music, I'm going to do that. But I'm not going to skip frequently the thing that is my most primary anchor, right?
Cool.
So I'm committed to that. I'm committed. I want to do that till the day I die. But I've also realized I can't keep doing the workouts that I did when I was in my 20s and 30s.
Why? What's
and I have to
happening?
be, I don't know. the gray, so
It starts to happen,
but
yeah.
I'm being careful and saying, wait, just because I was able to at some point do this doesn't mean that I have to keep doing it that way. I want to evolve and grow with what my body, my brain, my spirit, my relationships are requiring of me. And that's exactly what I talk to the clients about, because when they began courtship or even got married 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, they were a certain person and so was their partner. If they're still the same person today, then something has gone wrong.
There's some arrested development.
But the fact is people aren't the same. But if we operate with our partner expecting them to be the same, but expecting them to tolerate our changes, that's a misalignment. I need to be able to grow, and the only way I can grow with you is to continue to stay curious with you, so that I can be aware of what's happening and evolving. Because we should be evolutionary. We're going to evolve. We're not the same thing as 18, 20, and 30. I hope not, right? Our intent is to evolve, but when in a relationship, we evolve and grow together. And there's this kind of accordion thing. There's things that we do separate. There's things we do together, separate and together. And you can make some really good music with an accordion.
Wow.
My father-in-law does the accordion, so good analogy.
Wow. Yeah, relationship and growth, curiosity.
And it's the same with your own relationship with yourself. The same concept. There's things that you are really wanting to be invested in with yourself, and sometimes you just want to take a step back and go, I just need to observe this. I don't need to invest in it, I just need to observe what that is all about.
I love this approach because I think sometimes we feel maybe our culture is like,
Sometimes it's like that?
It feels like we gotta, it feels like you gotta just like, attack the mountain with everything that you've got. And I love this realistic approach, this compassionate approach you're giving. Yeah. One thing I wonder is, for your ideal client, your men here that are struggling, what would you say to them?
With regards to how to what?
I think just with regards to hope.
So my go-to is to invite them to recognize that this is going to be a permanent way of living. This is not a temporary adjustment, change.
Not a Band-Aid, a
right?
fix.
You got it. It's not like come to therapy for a little while, it's all good, and then just carry on as usual. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to come to therapy the rest of your life. That is not it. Again, like I said, I'm working myself out of a job the moment I meet you. That's what my intent is. And I'm wanting to move you towards connection with other people. That's why we run so many men's groups here.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that.
So the men's groups are all about, even though we have a few that are very specific to pornography or sexual addiction, all of them are about increasing male intimacy, male connection, male bonding, male support. I'm not looking to create an accountability group.
No, I've heard tons about your groups. They're just, like, men talk about them as so connective, so safe.
It's what I felt with these men that showed me how to be an adult, mature guy. And I'm not always mature, as you know. I have my moments. But,
we all do.
Most of the time, I would like to think that I'm primarily a mature man. And this is what I want to offer to these men, and this is what they're generating themselves. We go through some processes that are scripted for what we want to do as clinicians, but most of it is about what they're bringing to the room and just creating a safe space, and then they take that outside of the room. That's why we only meet once every 2 weeks or twice a month. We don't come every week. I want them to have space between it that they then need to reach out to one another. They're on GroupMe. They're on they have a text chat stream and so forth. They're connecting and forming these bonds so that when I'm in the rear view mirror of their life, these guys are still right in the passenger seat with them, riding along with them. And if it's not them, they've learned how to do that with other men that come along, that they can build that along the way. If certain relationships falter and fail, I still know how to create this. I want to learn that my life is better and healthiest when I have healthy male connection with other men who are striving to be healthier today than they were yesterday.
That's awesome.
We're trying.
We got a little glimpse into the male experience here.
Little glimpse.
Little glimpse. We need some more of those, I think. Very cool. Well, this is Mark Bell. Awesome, as you can hear. His groups are amazing. His work is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
His curiosity about men and men's experience and how to grow. I think it's just fantastic.
I enjoy the work. Groups are my favorite, just so you know. That is my favorite time of day when I'm here at the office.
That's your like Zen moment where you're in the flow.
When we're in there and having those moments, because I think I'm getting as much or more than they are sometimes out of it. And so it's a treat and a pleasure. So
that's cool. Very cool. Mark Bell, you guys. Take a bow. Right. Homage to your old